Welcome, welcome, welcome. Welcome to our spiritual mornings. Welcome to our inward world. Let's close our eyes and be grateful for all that we have. Take 100 seconds and express our gratitude for all that has transpired in the last 24 hours. When we're grateful, we are increasing our body's capacity into multiple dimensions. We don't only have one body. We have so many bodies. Body of the known unknown, body of the unknown known, etheric body, auric body, spiritual body, emotional body, mental body, and so many more. But gratitude is the common thread that weaves the tapestry of getting so much more in every single realm. It takes us beyond this time and this dimension into multi-dimensional world by expanding it. So when we are grateful, our vibration changes. If you have any physical problem, and if you're grateful for one part of it, that physical problem starts healing. Everything is because of emotions. If our emotion world changes, things change. Life can be so meaningful, so wonderful. We are the ones who give meaning to it, the wonderment to it. It's imperative to think, what is it that makes me happy? What is it that makes me grateful? So much can be done. So much can be achieved. Manifestation leads to so many things. But when we're grateful, we accelerate the manifestation. Whether we manifest about a better spiritual health or a better something else, we're adding value to it. Let's be aware that there's always a change which is coming. The good times don't last as much, nor do the bad times. So, not getting attached to a moment or a person will help us elevate in our spiritual path a bit more. Detachment is important. Being overly attached leads to situations that are very much avoidable. Let's once again feel the energy in our body. Feel where's the movement happening. Our eyes already closed, and now without doing anything, just feel, are there any sensations? Are there any movement inside? Usually we trigger it with breath, but right now you haven't triggered it. Are you still able to tap into your own energy? Where's the flow? Where's the meaning? See it happening. Tune into it. And see that you have become a conduit of spreading all the good things. And see your body becoming like a pillar house, a storehouse, and you emitting this beautiful energy from all pores of your being in all directions possible. And wherever your energy is going, people are being blessed. And your energy is so powerful. The more you give, the more you get. And it's going far and wide, beyond and beyond. And it's a healing energy. It's so powerful. When disease reverses, calamities heal, things heal, people heal, situations heal. Because inside all of us is a healer. And whatever intention we have, when we emit our energy with that intention, it works. So tap into it. Welcome yourself into the world of giving. To create opportunities throughout the day to indulge in acts of compassion, empathy, love, and kindness may be a bit difficult, but to create an intention of giving all of that in the morning and giving is so much easier and yet so powerful. Feel the flow of energy. If you feel, you can also extend your hands in a blessing pose and bless far and wide. So many people are receiving your blessings. Imagine that. Blessings of healing, whether they're carrying trauma in their bodies, whether they're carrying anything. At a cellular level, the healing is happening. And when you're releasing energy, also release any possible ego, which limits our own growth. Just release and feel the baggage that you're carrying of your I, me, am just getting released. Enjoy the process, enjoy the journey. It's so powerful. Whenever you're done, keep your hands in your laps, open and receiving, and keep receiving the blessings from your hands into your being. Now that you've given so much, imagine what you're receiving back. It's a 10 ratio, 1 is to 10. How many ever blessings you've given for healing or whatever you've given, the same is coming back to you. Receive it. Keep receiving it. Even though you may not feel tingling, you're still receiving it from every pore of your being, and especially from the center of your palms. Once done, let's bow in gratitude to all the light beings for this shower of blessings. May we only go onward and upward in every physical body, spiritual body, emotional body, mental body. And may we evolve and see, face, emote ascension. And may we all lift others too. Whenever you're ready, you can open your eyes for a morning session of reading. We've begun the book Same Soul, Many Bodies yesterday, which is about progression. Here we are. I think many of us spend too much time worrying about what the highest level of comprehension might be. The question is fascinating to contemplate, but our goal here is to heal ourselves as we are in a physical world. I see a lot of people, particularly new age people, who aren't well grounded in this world, being right here now. Progression in the areas of contemplation and meditation is important. But those who spend their lives in seclusion should understand that we are a social species, and those who do not experience the joys of the physical, the pleasures of the senses, aren't learning the full lesson this present life has to teach them. As I said until recently, I have only regressed patients so that they see and understand their past lives. Now I have begun to progress them into the future, but even if we study in only our past lives, we can see how we have evolved within them. Each of our lives is a learning experience, and if we gain wisdom from our past lives, then through free will, conscious will, that is, and the free will of the soul, we can affect the person, that we can affect the present. Our souls choose our parents, for our impulse is to continue the learning process so we can proceed towards healing. We choose what we do in our present life for the same reason. We do not choose abusive parents, for no one wants to be abused, yet some parents become abusive. It is their free will. And in later life, or perhaps in this one, they will learn the lesson of compassion and stop that behavior. I chose to come back as my son of Alvin and Dorothy Wise and to be a psychiatrist. In my previous life, I was an underground Czech resistance fighter killed in 1942 or 43. Perhaps the way I died led to my present study of immortality. Perhaps my desire to study and teach was a carryover from an earlier life as a priest in ancient Babylonian. Whatever I chose to came back as Brian Weiss, so I could maximize my personal learning and share it with the others by becoming a healer. I selected my parents because they made it easy for me to learn. My father revered academics and wanted me to become a doctor. He was also interested in religion and taught me about Judaism, but he didn't force it, so I became a secular rabbi, a psychiatrist. My mother was loving and non judgmental. She gave me a sense of safety that in later life allowed me to risk my career and financial security by publishing many lives, many masters. Neither parent was spiritual in the New Age sense, nor did they believe in reincarnation. I chose them, it seems, because they offered me support and the freedom to go on to a life path. I eventually selected. Was anyone involved with me in the decision, I wonder? Spirits, guides, angels, all of them part of the uh, one soul. I don't know. Part of the one soul. I don't know. True, some soul chose to come back as Saddam Hussein and other as Osama bin Laden. I believe they came back to maximize their learning opportunities the same way as you and me. They did not choose to come back initially to do harm, to cause violence and blow up other people and become terrorists. They came back to resist that urge, probably because they had succumbed to it in previous lifetimes. They came back for a kind of field test in the school we live in, and they failed miserably. This is all speculation, of course, but I believe their souls came back to inhabit them in an effort to find alternatives to violence, prejudice, and hatred. The abusive parent's soul comes back for the same reason. They amassed money and power and face a choice of violence or compassion, prejudice or teaching, hatred or love. This time we know the decision. They will have to come back again, face the consequences of their actions, face the choices again until they are able to move forward. Students ask me why anyone who chose to come back to live in a rat infested slum in Bogota or Harlem, the Buddhist monks I've met, the entourage of Dalai Lama, laugh at the question because they see life as a stage performance. The man in the slum is just a role in the next lifetime. The same actor will appear as a prince. I believe we come into a rat invested apartment because we have to understand what it is like to be poor. In other lifetimes, we will be rich. We must be rich, poor, male, female, healthy, stickly, big, small, strong, weak. If in one lifetime I'm wealthy and someone else is living as I once did in the slums of Bogota, then I will want to help that person because it will be a step in my own growth. There are two vital elements at work here. First, we cannot learn everything in one lifetime. That doesn't matter because there are numerous lifetimes to come. Second, each time we come back, it is to be healed. Our lives are a series of step ups of evolutionary scale. Where are we then when we are completely healed and we reach the top of the staircase, probably the highest spiritual level, which some call heaven, others nirvana? I believe that our planet was created as a place to experience emotions, sensations, feelings, and relationships. Here we can be in love and feel great pleasure and joy. We can smell flowers, touch a baby's skin, see the glory of a landscape, hear the music of the wind. That was the intent. What a classroom. In the next years, our great test will be whether we want to honor the school or destroy it. As modern technology has made it possible for us to do, I'm not sure our free will make that choice. It may be our destiny if a higher mind, the oneness, decides that a planet is worth preserving, then it won't be destroyed. If it does not and we vaporize the world, our souls will nevertheless endure. They would find another school. But it may not be as beautiful as our world. It may not be as physical. Our souls are all at the same age, which is ageless, but some souls advance more quickly than others. Saddam Hussein may be a third grader while Dalai Lama is in a graduate school. In the end, we will all graduate to the one. How quickly we progress depends on our free will. The free will I'm writing about here isn't the same as a son's ability to choose our parents and our circumstances. Rather, it is human will, and we are in control of it on earth. I distinguish it from destiny, which often brings us together with another for good or for ill. It is free will that lets us choose what we eat, our cars, our clothes, our vacations. Free will allows us to select our partners as well, though it is probably destiny that draws us to them and them to us. I met Carol, my wife, in the Catskill Mountains. I was a busboy and she was a guest at the hotel where I was working. Destiny? The course of a relationship, like the course of hundreds of millions of other relationships, depended on our free will. We choose to date and we choose to marry. Similarly, we can choose to increase our capacity to love or to be compassionate. We can choose to perform the little acts of kindness that brings us internal satisfaction. We can choose generosity over selfishness, respect over prejudice. In every aspect of our lives, we can choose to make the loving decisions, and by doing so, our souls will evolve. John E. Mack, MD, the Pulitzer Prize author and professor of psychiatry at Harvard Medical School, points out on that. We are now witnessing a coming together of science, psychology, and spirituality after centuries of ideological and disciplinary fragmentation. Both modern physics and depth psychology are revealing to us a universe in which all that we can perceive around us is connected by resonance, both physical and non physical, that can make the possibility of universal justice, truth, and love more than just a utopian fantasy. At the heart of this possibility lie what in the Western secular world are called non ordinary states of consciousness, but in the world great religious traditions is variously called primary religious feeling, mystical oneness, connection with the ground of being or universal love. At the heart of these states of consciousness or being is a potential extension of the self beyond its usual boundaries. I would substitute soul for self and add the boundaries exceed the immeasurable universe. It has taken me 24 years to reach the simple truth at the core of this book. We are immortal, we are eternal, our souls will never die. This being so, we should start acting as if we know the immortality is our blessing. Or to put it more simply, we should prepare for immortality here, now, today, and tomorrow, and each day for the rest of our lives. If we prepare, our souls will move up the evolutionary scale, come closer to healing, come closer to the higher state. If we don't, we will recycle our present lives, in effect, march in place and postpone to a future life the mastering of the lesson we might have learned in this one. How do we prepare? How do immortal people act? In this life, we prepare by learning how to have better relationships, how to be more loving, more compassionate, how to be healthier physically, emotionally, spiritually, how to help others, how to enjoy this world and yet advance its evolution, advance its healing. By preparing for immortality, we will quite present fears, feel better about ourselves, grow spiritually, and we will be healing our future lives at the exact same moment. Now, thanks to progression that my parents have experienced and reported back to me, we can see the results of our present behavior and thus shape it for the future. If we can accelerate the healing process, the evolutionary process, this is the most therapeutic action we can take, the best thing we can do, not only for our own souls, but for everyone in the world. This is what I've learned from my parents, from my patients. Chapter 2, George, Anger Management. Anger management is one of the skills we can learn now in order to avoid repetitions of violence in our lives to come. The following case history is of a man I treated before I began progressing some of my patients. Had he been able to see what lay in the years ahead, his treatment might have gone more quickly. George Skulnick was doing his best to destroy himself. Despite a history of heart attack and high blood pressure,
He was overweight, smoked heavily, worked too hard, cancelled vacations at the last moment, misused his heart medications by either forgetting to take them on or to compensate by taking too many at a time. He'd already suffered one serious heart attack and was primed for another. His cardiologist, Barbara Tracy, recommended that he sees me for stress management. George is a tough case. Barbara had warned, beware of explosions. And now here he was in my office with his wife, woman in her mid-40s, who looked at me with what I took to be pleading eyes. Betty will sit in the waiting room, George said, in case you need her. If you wouldn't mind, I said, gently turning to her. Not at all. She gave me one last pleading look and then left the office, closing the door behind her. George was a squat, solid, powerful looking man with massive arms, too great a stomach, and surprisingly spindly legs, a non athletic Babe Ruth. His moon face was florid, capillaries had burst around his nose, hinting at heavy drinking. I judged him to be nearly 60, though it turned out he was only 52. You're the reincarnation doctor, he said, not a fact, not a question. I am. I don't believe in that crap. He was trying to unnerve me. It didn't work. Many people don't. Dr. Tracy said that you practice something called regression therapy. Yes, often it leads the patients back to past lives. Bullish. Bullish. He stopped himself and raised a hand. Don't get me wrong, I'm game for anything if it'll prevent another attack. Actually, George had once reported a near death experience to Barbara. During his heart attack, he had felt himself rising out of his body towards a cloud of blue light. While he was floating, he became aware of a thought. Everything was going to be all right. Knowledge calmed him, and he wanted to tell his family about it. From his vantage point, he could see where his wife and two children were. They were extremely anxious, and he wanted to reassure them, but couldn't. He glanced away for another view of his body, and then he looked back. He could see that they weren't paying any attention to him. It was as if it was years after his death this event persuaded him to come to me. Why don't we decide what to do after I found out more about you? I said, Dr. Tracy, you're in a construction business. Skulnick contractors, we specialize in factories, warehouses, and office buildings. You must have seen our signs, they're all over Miami. I had indeed. It's a lot of headaches, he continued. Constant pressure. If I don't oversee every site personally, someone's sure to screw up. What happens if they do? I get angry. His eyes flashed. I knew from Barbara that rage was the greatest danger George faced. A knife poised at his heart. Tell me about the anger, I said. I lose control. I'm a screamer. My face gets red and I feel my heart pumping and about to explode. His breath quickened, and even as he talked, I want to lash out, hit somebody, kill somebody. I get so mad. What about when you're with your family, your wife? It's just as bad, maybe worse. Sometimes I'll be furious at somebody in the office, have a few drinks my way home, and come in looking for a fight. Dinner not ready. Wow, haven't done your homework? Whap. He lowered his head to his palms. They're terrified of me. I don't really hit them, of course, but there may come a time. I see. Maybe we can find out where the rage comes from. He raised his father. My father, I suppose. He was a screamer and he drank too. That might explain it, I said, but maybe there's more. Something that happened in a past life? He asked. I shrugged. Maybe it's possible. Do you think regression will help? I believe it's important for you, yes. Though I could help you through traditional psychotherapy, and you might prefer that. The fact that you had a near-death episode makes me think you'll regress easily. And it's unpleasant for you to be painful or too intense. I'll know immediately and will stop. He was silent for a moment. Then, you use hypnosis, right? Yes. If I'm hypnotized, will you know if I want to stop? You'll tell me. From my other life, exactly. I could see a yeah, sure from in his brain, but all he said was, come on, let's give it a try. In Through Time into Healing, I wrote the following. Hypnosis is a main technique I use to help patients access past life memories. One goal of hypnosis, as well as meditation, is to access the subconscious. In the subconscious, mental processes occur without a conscious perception of them. We experience moments of intuition, wisdom, and creativity when these processes flash into our conscious awareness. The subconscious is not limited by our imposed boundaries of logic, space, and time. It can remember everything from any time. It can transcend the ordinary to touch upon a wisdom for beyond our everyday capabilities. Hypnosis access the wisdom of the subconscious in a focused way in order to achieve healing. We are in hypnosis whenever the relationship between the conscious and subconscious mind is reconfigured so that the subconscious plays a more dominant role. When you're hypnotized, you're not asleep. Your conscious mind is always aware of what you're experiencing while you're being hypnotized. Despite the deep conscious contact, your mind can comment, criticize, and censor. You're always in control of what you say. Hypnosis is not a truth serum. You do not enter a time machine and suddenly find yourself transported to another time and place with no awareness of the present. It may sound as though it requires a great deal of skill to reach the deeper levels of hypnosis. However, each of us experiences these with ease every day as we pass through the state between wakefulness and sleeping known as the hypnagogic state. Listen to someone's guiding voice aids in focusing concentration and helps a patient to reach in a deeper level of hypnosis and relaxation. There is no danger in hypnosis. No person I have ever hypnotized has become stuck in the hypnotic state. You can emerge from a state of hypnosis whenever you want. No one has ever violated his or her moral and ethical principles. No one has involuntary involuntarily act like a chicken or a duck. No one can control you. You are in control. In hypnosis, your mind is always aware and observing. This is why people who may be deeply hypnotized and actively involved in a childhood or past life sequence of memories are able to answer the therapist's question, speak their current life language, know the geographical places they are seeing, and even know the ear, which usually flashes before the inner eyes or just appears in their minds. The hypnotized mind, always retaining an awareness and a knowledge of the present, puts a childhood or past life memories into context. If the year 1900 flashes and you find yourself building a pyramid in ancient Egypt, you know that the year is, even if you don't see those actual letters. This is also why a hypnotized patient, finding himself a peasant fighting in a medieval European war, for example, can recognize people from the past lifetime whom he knows in his current life. This is why he can speak modern English, compare the crude weapons of that time with those he might have seen or used in the lifetime, gives dates, and so on. His present day mind is aware, watching, commenting. He can always compare the details and events with those of his current life. He is the movie's observer and his critic, and usually it start at the same time. And all the while, he can remain in the relaxed hypnotic state. Hypnosis puts the patient in a state that holds great potential for healing by giving the patient access to the subconscious mind. To speak metaphorically, it puts the patient in the magical forest that holds the healing tree. But if hypnosis lets the patient into that healing country, it is a regression process that is a tree that holds the sacred berries he or she must eat to heal. Regression therapy is a mental act of going back to an earlier time, whatever the time may be, in order to retrieve memories that may soon be that will be negatively influencing a patient's present life, and that are probably the source of the patient's symptoms. Hypnosis allows the mind to shortcut conscious barriers to tap this information, including those barriers that prevent patients from consciously accessing their past lives. I would escort George into the forest, maintaining my role as therapist by making no effort to suggest or influence what berries he might find on that tree, by keeping my voice calm and soothing to ensure his comfort and relaxation, by asking only those questions that would allow him to further describe what he was seeing, by showing no surprise, by making no moral judgment, by giving no interpretation, but instructing him in selected instances, in short, by acting as a guide. He sat on a small, comfortable couch. I faced him from my chair. Relax, I said, close your eyes, and we began. Neither of us knew what he would find. I'm an innkeeper, he said, a German innkeeper. I'm lying on a bed in a room upstairs, a bedroom. It's the Middle Ages. I'm an old man over 70 and very weak. Through recently, I was strong. I can see myself clearly. I'm unkempt. My clothes are soiled. I'm sick. My once powerful arms are thin now. My back muscles, which I could lift boulders, have atrophied. I have barely enough strength to sit up. He looked at me from a distance of 7 centuries and bowed his head. I have no heart. His family surrounded him. I was unkind to them all, mean to my wife, mean to my children. I neglected them, drank, and had affairs, even with other women, but they were dependent on me. Couldn't leave me even though I abused them. My rages were violent, they were afraid of me. Recently he had suffered a stroke of heart attack, and now it was he who was dependent on them. But despite his abusiveness and neglect, they took care of him with compassion, even with love. His wife in the present life was his son in the past life, and his daughter in the present life was his wife in the past one. Such permutations are common. Those who are important in a person's life were important in past ones and remain with us. The family tended to him tirelessly and without complaint, for he was too sick to do anything for himself. Eventually his body, ruined by years of excessive drinking, gave out, and he floated above the grieving family, looking down at them, feeling guilty that he had treated them so absently. It is at the time of the death of the body that one conducts a life review, and he reported that guilt was what he felt most, guilt for a life misspent. Let go of your guilt, I told him. There's no need for it anymore. The family is fine, and guilt is holding you back. Together, we reviewed his life as an innkeeper. What lessons could we draw from it? He was still hypnotized, still in the inn, still aware of the instant he died. His thoughts were expressed in choppy sentences, but the feelings behind them were clear and pure. There's great foolishness in danger and violence. Bodies are fragile and temporary. There is safety in love and compassion. All families need nurturing and sustenance. I needed to nurture them, just as they nurtured me. The greatest power is the power of love. All this he reported with the force of revelation. When he finished, he seemed exhausted, so I brought him gently back to the present, and we were able to discuss his insights, what he had found when he went back. He left feeling dazed, the first regressions unfailingly powerful, and promised to return the following week. When he left, I jotted a note to myself. Can see future life, seeds planted here to his current life, again a heart attack, again abuse of this family, a similar pattern. There's a lesson coming up. I looked forward to George's return. He was a 17-year-old soldier, and next time I regressed him, fighting for his country, France, during World War One. His left arm was blown out in an explosion, and when he experienced this, he clutched his arm and reported feeling pain, but the pain disappeared, for he realized that he had died from his wounds. Again, the instant of the death, he floated about his body and was able to see himself at another time in the same life. He was no longer a soldier, but an observer detached from the events he was describing. Now he was a boy, no more than 10, living a hard-working but peaceful life on a farm, with two loving parents and a younger sister who idolized him. There were horses, cows, chickens in the farm. It was not an eventful prior life, this life before the war. I wondered if the pain in his left arm correlated with the heart attack he'd experienced both earlier and very recently. but I couldn't be sure. Sometimes it's simple to see a connection between past and present lives. But in this case, I didn't get a good follow up. I didn't have a chance to think about it for long because suddenly he became extremely agitated. He connected his French life to another. It is unusual when this happens. Normally, a regression leads to one lifetime. So the patient will often cover different times and events in that life. Now he was a warrior, a Mongol or Tatar, living in Russia or Mongolia. He couldn't be sure. It was some 900 years ago. Fearsomely strong, a master horseman, he roamed the steppes, killing his enemies, amassing great wealth. The people he killed were often innocent young men, many of them farmers who had been conscripted into innocent young men, many of conscripted into the army against their will, like the French boy he would eventually become. He killed hundreds during his lifetime and died an old man without any of the regret he experienced 200 years later when he was a German innkeeper. He himself did not suffer. He learned no lessons. Those would come in later lives. The life review he did as an innkeeper seemed to be the first time experienced contrition. His Mongol experience showed me something that I had recently begun to figure out. Learning about the consequences of your actions is not necessarily an immediate thing. He would have to go through other violent lifetimes before he could feel what he had caused. How many lifetimes I couldn't be sure. I could only count the number he responded or reported. Perhaps he had been killed in a World War One as retribution for his violent life as a warrior. Perhaps his innkeeper condition was not enough. Perhaps if he had changed prior to his act of violence, he would not have come back to be killed in France. Perhaps he would have lived a long life on the farm. We discussed all this when I brought him out of hypnosis. I think he was telling me that if he had been so violent in his past lives, he wouldn't be so abusive in his present life. He had gone from remorseless killer to abusive innkeeper to French soldier, killed before he had a chance for a full life, to a successful businessman who was still raging and had severe heart problems and blood pressure. That day, I wrote two notes: the value of empathy. He had to feel what he had caused, and the heart is connecting these lifetimes. What would come next? This time he was a thin, gay Japanese man in his 30s, living in the 19th century. He told me he had an affair of the heart. He'd fallen in love with a much younger man. There was no way to get the young man's love he felt, the others then seducing him. So that was it he set out to do. Alcohol was a means. He took his beloved to a room and piled him with liquor. Half against the young man's will, they became lovers that night. The man was ashamed, embarrassed, humiliated. Homosexuality was a dishonorable, forbidden act in his culture. The young man was particularly mortified that he had allowed himself to be taken. His reaction was rage. He arrived at the next rendezvous with a knife or a sword and plunged into the older man's heart. George was too thin and weak to resist. My patient died instantly. In his life review, the themes of hatred, anger, impulsive rage, and alcohol were all present. He should have been more patient, John realized. He did not have to seduce a younger man, but could have waited for a willing partner. He was not judging his homosexuality. His sin was interfering with someone else's free will by manipulating him. A more subtle connection centered on weight. For all his strength, George was obese, which added to the risk of heart attack. Sometimes people put on and maintain weight as a protection. This is common with women who have been abused or raped. Symbolically, they are trying to prevent that violence from recurring. And here was George, a rapist who was also a victim of violence. His obesity seemed to turn from that life and from another, not this one. Once George understood this, dieting became easier. I wrote, his past life scar may be from the knife wound, cardiac susceptibility in the future. I couldn't be sure, but frequently we come back with wounds or weaknesses in the areas of the body that were the site of mortal wounds or damage in a past life. In George's case, the connection seemed likely. By this time, George was able to go very deep. He seemed shaken by his experiences and inspired by them. In 1981, when my patient Catherine was in a deep hypnotic state and remembering the significant lessons from past lives, she brought back messages from the masters. Now I asked George, when he stayed in a deeper state, is there anything more? Are there any messages for you, any other information or wisdom for you to take back? I took down all he said as though I were taking dictation. The earth life is a gift. It's a school to learn from how love manifests in the physical dimensions where bodies and emotions exist. But the school has many playgrounds, and those need to be used. The physical life is meant to be enjoyed. There's one reason you have been given the senses. Be good, people. Have fun and enjoy yourselves. Enjoy the simple yet abundant pleasures of life while not harming other people or other things like nature. While he left, I wrote, when George awoke, he knew these messages were very important to him because he didn't have any fun in his present life. And they were simple things about why we're here. There are playgrounds here too. It's not all work and serious. Be good people, meant to be compassionate and caring at all levels. When he came to his next session, George told me about a miraculous dream. Whatever doubts he had about regression therapy had disappeared. He was excited, vibrant. The messages he had learned took the form of a person, a spiritual being bathed in the blue light he had seen during the first regression. The person in the blue light told him what he needed to love himself more, and the earth people needed to take care of one another, not harm others. He received instructions, he told me, though he wasn't able to go into much detail. They were instructions meant for him, he knew, but concerned humanity at all levels. He needed to communicate better, to explain his thoughts and actions, rather than just lashing out. Be more gentle, the Spirit said. Don't do harm to others. George told me that there was a hierarchy of spirits and that the one who visited him in his dream wasn't necessarily at the highest level. There are other pieces and dimensions that are even higher and do not belong to Earth. Still, we have to learn the lessons of the masters because the important thing was to progress, he said. While this was not as cogent or encompassing in the messages that Catherine delivered, I was moved by it. Once again, it was a case of patient leading doctor. Different connections were evident in George's next regression. This time, his life was Southern slave woman in the early 18th century. George was married to a particularly brutal man. The husband in the black woman's life was also George's father in the present life. In the early life, George's husband beat his wife so savagely that he broke her legs, rendering her paralyzed. In this life, George's father was a source of great strength and support, particularly in George's childhood, which was marked by arthritis in George's knee. But George's father was a frightening authoritarian figure given in the same kind of rages that George would later repeat. And the boy quickly learned that to accomplish things away from his father's influence, he would have to stand up for himself, an obvious correlation to his life as a slave. Independence and strength became the hallmarks of George's pre heart attack, and he carried them with them, perhaps too single mindedly, even after he'd gotten out of the hospital. The lesson George needed to learn in this lifetime was balance. He had to combine authority with the ability to listen to others, to take suggestions as well as to give orders. He regressed briefly into another life, of which he saw glimpses. He was a Stone Age man clothed in animal skins with hairy hands and feet, but he died very young of starvation. Here was another explanation of excessive weight in this life. People close to starvation, just as those who died in the Holocaust, often become overweight when reincarnated, needing the weight as reassurance that they will never be hungry again. I put his past life in chronological order: Stone Age man, Mongol warrior, innkeeper in the Middle Ages, slave woman with paralyzed legs, murdered Japanese gay man, and Frenchman dying for his country. Surely there were many additional lives as well, but he didn't get to them in our sessions, and perhaps never would. His blue spirit told him that we see the past lifetimes are important to this one. Learning keeps happening in the other side too. George told me, now an expert, and I was pleased at his positiveness. You develop skills, you work on your talents, it doesn't stop. There were consistent themes in all the lives he remembered: violence and anger, physical pain, abusiveness, constant threat of death. They were paralleled in the present life. When George put the past lives together, it became obvious to him that his present day lifestyle was deadly. He was drinking too much. His blood pressure needed to be controlled. He could have another heart attack. His rage put on the danger out of Stoke. All this took nearly 2 years of intense therapy with periodic sessions thereafter. Just as he joined these insights with other therapeutic tools I gave him, such as relaxation CDs, I had the pleasure of watching him begin to shift. He was able to relax more without doing formal meditation, something I recommended, but he would not do. He responded he reported communication better with the people in his office. He said he was better able to listen and to accept setbacks without getting ballistic. Even when he did get angry, the periods were briefer and less violent. He was able to relax from time to time. He would put on one of my CDs in his office during lunch hour, tell his secretary to make sure he wasn't interrupted. He started to play golf and go fishing again and attend Florida Martins baseball games. Physically, Joy was getting better too. His blood pressure went down, his heart function improved, he began to exercise, he drank less, he had healthier food, all the concert with his wife, attend the concert with his wife. Sometimes I would bring her into our sessions where she verified his progress with a gratitude that was as heartfelt as his. It was the same with their children. He was becoming a father, a friend, a guide, not a dictator. One chain led to another, and soon there was a progression of changes, which we call a synergistic loop. Success followed success. I had glimpses of the other side, he told me. I saw myself in a future life as a beloved teacher to many children. It was a very happy life. I was very content. The skills I learned were ones I could bring back to my physical life here. And I saw another world, just glimpses of it. Crystalline structures and lights and people, like light beams. I was astonished. As I say, this was before I was purposely taking people into the future. His vision, I thought then, might have been a metaphor, a symbol for what his present day soul wished for it might have been nothing more than a dream, influenced by a work on his past. Still, perhaps what he saw was true. At the end of our last session, I wrote, he has healed the spiritual heart as well as the physical heart. His cardiologist, Barbara Tracy, confirmed the physical part, and I knew that George was hopeful now. Life was suddenly important to him. Spirituality became part of his psychological makeup. Family mattered, friends mattered, co workers mattered, pleasure too. He was prepared for the next stage in his evolution when George's body dies and his soul is ready to return. I am convinced his new life will be at a higher level. It will almost surely be gentler than the lives he has led. Had he not revisited and understood the lessons of the past lives, it would have taken him longer to reach the stage he is in now. He might have had to spend several more lives in an angry, violent state before he learned for himself the truths his aggressions had shown him. His therapy terminated, and I no longer see him as a patient. Should he care to, I'd welcome the chance to progress him, not for therapeutic purposes, but for us to see what his non-violent next lives could be. George's present life was changed by his renunciation of anger and violence. His predominant issues, other patients present, and past lives demonstrate how change is possible in dozen different aspects of life, and by extrapolation in hundreds more. It is rare that a person will master more than one lesson in one lifetime. It is rare that a person, sorry, though residual attention is often paid to others. For purpose of the book, I have segregated lessons into different discrete areas, although they often overlap, and evolution in one can lead to evolution in others. The histories you are about to read are remarkable examples of people evolving towards new lives that take them to higher planes and will eventually lead them to highest plane of all. With this, we conclude today's session, and let's just meditate for 10 minutes before we
begin this wonderful, magical day ahead. Let's close our eyes and relax. If you wish, you can lie down. Take a deep breath in and exhale. Take another deep breath in and exhale. And the third time, take a deep breath in and hold it for 3 seconds. And as you release, just be so grateful. Imagine yourselves in the middle of a school. Mother Earth around you. A school of learning. Learning loving kindness to yourself first. So ask yourself, how do you love yourself? What do you do for yourself? Because whoever we love, we give. So what about myself? What do I give myself? How do I love myself? What do I do for me to fall more in love? If I love myself, I will do more of what I love. I will prioritize myself. But do I? Life is so beautiful, kind, gentle, compassionate. Do I do these simple acts with myself? Today is about growing deeper and deeper within us. How can I better my game in loving myself? How can I not take undue advantage of others? How do I become a better version of myself? What am I here for? What lessons have come to me? I have a purpose to come in this life. And apart from sharing love and light, there's so much more to me. What is that? Can I tap into the energy? I am here to evolve in every stage, every day. What am I doing to evolve? Loving myself was the first step, loving others being the second. Who am I? So much to ponder, so much to assess, so much to learn. So much to grow, so much to evolve. Let's all be connected with ourselves and think about this particular today and keep going richer and richer so that we can experience a life full of love and kindness. With that note, I'll leave you for the thought of the day. May you grow leap and bound and spread your love and light. With lots of love, I now call it a morning. Have a blessed day. Thank you, thank you, thank you.